Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled cop refuses to move his patrol car and knowingly blocks an ambulance. I taught him a lesson he won't forget. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. As an EMT, I can tell you that I have seen a ton of things while I am working. Many of them being jerks that don't want to respect the fact that an ambulance means there is an emergency and they need to basically give us room. This goes for people who don't move to the side when we are driving down the road and people who get in our way while we are stopped and trying to do our job. The reason that this particular incident is being told to you all is because the jerk in this instance was an entitled police officer. I know that in certain countries it is basically not possible to tell an officer to do anything and they can get away with anything they want. In Russia though, an EMT can and will fight back against a cop if they are getting in the way of our job. On top of that, the law will side with us over them, especially because we are trying to save lives. I recommend that all EMTs put people in their place when appropriate. If your country is one of those where cops can do no wrong, then maybe don't try it there. There was a car accident involving about 5 different cars. Somebody was stopped at a light and another person rammed into them full speed, which made them go forward into other cars. We were sent to the scene because that first car that got hit, the passenger ended up hurt, and since she was also pregnant, we wanted to get her and the baby checked out ASAP. Of course, a ton of police cars were around trying to deal with the fault of the crash and all that stuff. For us though, the only thing that mattered was get the woman into the ambulance and go to the hospital. While we were parked and getting the woman ready for transport, another police car parked right in front of the ambulance. We had no room to wiggle around and basically that car had to move in order for us to get to the hospital. The only thing was that the car was empty and I had no idea which police officer belonged to that exact car. I tried to call out and see which car it belonged to until I found this one officer that it belonged to, and he looked at me with an angry look on his face before speaking. Entitled officer, can't you see that I'm dealing with an investigation here? Open your eyes and take a look around. Me, I understand that, but your car is in the way and we cannot get to the hospital, so if you could just move it for a second and let us get out, that would be great. Entitled officer, you don't tell me what to do. I will move my car when I'm done here. You can either wait or go around me. This was not the first time I had to ask an officer to move his car, but it was the first time that after asking, they had refused. Me, sir, we have an injured and pregnant woman in the back. We cannot wait until all of this is sorted to get out of here. Entitled officer, my job is more important than you trying to move the ambulance. If you bother me again, I might just have to arrest you for getting in the way of an investigation. I gave up talking to him at this point and instead tried to figure out another solution. The driver had no ability to maneuver the thing, so I was left with no choice but to call the number for the head of police. EMTs in my area have access to it for emergencies, and told him what was going on. He was angry and told me to sit tight for just a couple more minutes and he would take care of everything. The woman was stable and talking with the baby, seeming to have a good heartbeat, so we were okay waiting a few more minutes for the head of the police force to do something about that officer. I saw the flashing lights of another police car and it turned out to be the head of police who was escorting a tow truck to the crime scene. Everybody thought that it would be for the wrecked car, but instead the tow truck hooked up the entitled officer's car and put it up on his bed. The officer did not even notice because he was busy chatting it up with somebody else and only noticed after the entire car was removed. He ran up and started yelling at the tow truck driver before seeing his boss. I heard his boss tell him off and saying that the towing for the police car was going to come out of his salary. We left pretty quickly and got the woman to the hospital without any major issues coming up. From the last I heard, she just had a little whiplash and some superficial injuries. Both her and the baby were going to end up being okay. I was lucky enough that I was able to find out the rest of the story of what happened back at the scene with the police officers. At least here in Russia, the EMTs and police tend to see each other enough that we end up having friends in the field. One of my friends told me when we went out for drinks what happened after I left. It turns out that the entitled officer still wanted to be right and explained to his boss that it was an emergency and that he had to park there. Then when the boss walked away, he started threatening the tow truck driver to be arrested if he didn't give back the police car right that second. He got hurt and the head of police got even more angry at his behavior. One of the other EMTs that stayed on the scene told the boss how he threatened to arrest me for asking him to move his car in the first place. An entire investigation against this guy was started and everything he had done as a cop was now being looked over. It turns out that this guy had a history of threatening to arrest people that did not agree with him or did not want to do what he said. He thought that being a police officer meant that he should get special privileges and get to do anything he wanted. Some of these things he probably would have gotten away with if his entire career was not being combed through. It was more than enough for the entitled officer to get fired from his job. He was labeled as abusing his power instead of using it to keep the people of Russia safe from crime. I am glad nothing happened to that woman, but if anything, he might have ended up being the person responsible for it. It also turns out that I was not the first EMT that he had pulled this stunt with. I was just the first to go over his head and do something about it. I had gotten many free drinks over the next couple of weeks from guys that just wanted to hear the story of how I got this entitled guy towed. Like I said before, it was not the first time that I had dealt with an entitled person getting in the way of my work. It was just the only time that it was a cop and ended up with him getting towed and losing his job. And yeah guys, this story shows that entitled people come in all shapes and sizes, sometimes even in law enforcement. Have you ever had to deal with an entitled police officer? Let us know in the comments, and now let's continue with the stories. This one is titled Revenge Against a Bank. I live in the Dominican Republic, where I moved from Eastern Europe. This happened about 15 years ago. I suddenly started getting automated phone calls from a bank, let's call them BB for bad bank, in which I had no account. The call was directed to somebody else, let's say to Juan Martinez, and would go like this. Esteemed Sir Martinez, we are calling from BB Bank and it is about your debt. Please get in touch with us as soon as possible. We appreciate blah blah blah. Naturally, after first several calls I did nothing, and the call would come like once in 7 to 10 days. Then I realized that they are not going to stop, so I called them. They would pass me from one department to another, and in the end some person would say that they took all the data and that they will make sure that I am not disturbed again. And of course, the calls kept coming and they always called during work hours. I called them at least 3 more times, and each time I had to explain what is going on, and again they will pass me to another department. So frustrating. And then their call came at 1:30 AM. I thought somebody died back home. Who else would call at that hour? That really made me furious. I stayed awake for some time and came up with a plan. Next day I dug up my old fax modem card and installed it in my PC. As I worked as an IT tech guy, I always kept all kinds of equipment. Then I went online and looked up their webpage, where I found a link to all the branches in the city. I went to every branch and put down their fax number. Next, I created a page in Word telling them very politely to stop harassing me. I questioned their sanity of customer relations for calling clients after midnight, gave them my home phone number and put "Stop harassing me" for the rest of the page. All the text was in the biggest bold letters fitted in one letter page. Then I copy-pasted the page 100 times and I sent it to all 20+ branches of the bank in the city. Till this day, I smile when I picture them finding 100 pages of my fax and then all the offices calling HQ for the same issue. Naturally, never again I received a call. And the next one is titled Revenge on Boss That Stole From Me. This is a long one from a few years back when I was a teen working at a generic fast food restaurant while in school. I was 16 at the time and had been working at this store for a year or so. We had this supervisor who was just horrible to work for. He would leave us while we were packed with customers and sit on his phone talking the whole shift, only to come out to bark orders and abuse us for not working hard enough. Eat the food we were cooking, and when customers complained he would belittle us in front of them, blaming our attitude. Now, everyone hated this guy, even the other supervisors hated him. He was just lazy, and to be completely honest, I think he only had the job because his uncle owned the store. He would come in to start his shift, plant his butt in the office, and would not come out unless it was to tell you how bad you are and how he is not afraid to replace you. And wow, guys, that definitely sounds like a healthy office culture, and surely I would love to work for that douchebag. We were all teens working that needed the money for our families, and he knew this and would hold our jobs over our head. The store was in a bad area, and we were all either supporting our families or trying to stay out of gangs and whatnot. The store is open until late, so we can get good hours in after school. Well, this one particular night we were very short-handed. It was me, my workmate Joe, and supervisor. Me and Joe assumed he would back us up and serve customers while I cooked, and Joe made all the burgers and wraps. But no, he came in, planted his ass in the office and told me to cook as well as do burgers and wraps, and Joe will serve. I protested and said it was too much for me to cover. He completely ignores me and acts as if he did not hear a word I said. So I protest a little louder, and no joke, he turns to me and says, "Well, if you don't like it, you can kiss this job goodbye." I bit my tongue and returned to my duties, pissed off. Joe was pissed off too. He knew that if supervisor ran things this way, he would receive all the abuse as he was the person out front serving. Like I said, we were in a bad area. Customers often came in drunk and irritable, there is often fights, and we get a lot of homeless people loitering and junkies. He knew he was going to get abused by someone tonight who would possibly throw something at him. Fast forward a few hours into our shift and we are in the middle of our dinner rush. There is a crap load of orders to be made and not enough meat cooked to make it all. Customers are complaining about waiting times. I can hear Joe out the front getting absolutely destroyed by the growing mob of angry customers whom he is doing his best to keep calm. Supervisor, for the first time the entire shift, comes out to see what is happening. He sees the mob of angry customers who are starting to shout in anger, hurling insults and all. He goes out to confront them and calls me to the front. As soon as I am inside of the mob and supervisor, he starts to berate me, throwing 1,000 questions at me at once. "Why isn't this done? Why isn't that done?" Abused me further. Then calls Joe over, abuses us both and tells the customers that he is sorry we are so incompetent, and pulls us both out back. "If you two don't lift your game, you won't be working here any longer, and just because you fell so far behind, I'm taking tonight's pay from you." At this point I wanted to kill him. We were working our asses off while short-handed, and he did not lift a finger to help us. I would not let this slide. It lit a fire in me, and I was going to make sure I got paid for tonight no matter what. So I plotted. I planned. I concocted a most evil plan in my pot of payback potions and would soon conjure it into existence. I even asked Joe for help with it, and he agreed willingly once I told him the plan. This plan would make us legends of our store. Executing the plan. After the rush was over and we were about to close shop, I went on my break. Remember how I said we had a lot of homeless people loitering? Well, I'm thankful we did. While I was on my break, I convinced a homeless man to come and take a dump in the urinal in our bathroom, and I would get him some free food. He laughed at me at first and asked if I was serious. It took a little convincing, as he would not believe someone was asking him to do something he usually does without being asked or offered food for. He agrees after a bit, but I told him I would have to sneak him in with the help of Joe. So I bring him to the slide doors and signal Joe to distract the supervisor long enough for him to turn his head from the computer screen and cameras. We then slip in and make it to the bathroom. When we get there, I tell him to go in and do the deed while I go make his food. He giggles and agrees and heads in. I headed to the kitchen where Joe is and tell him the job is underway and I will need a distraction to get him out once he is done. Joe tells me he will go to tell the supervisor that he is leaving. It will give me a moment to get him out back quick. I make the guy's food and head back to the bathroom entrance, but he is still not out. I was waiting a good 10 minutes, he had been in there for over 20 minutes. When he exited, I caught a whiff of the most foul odor seeping from the bathroom. What the hell, dude? What did you do in there? He tells me he may have missed a bit, but job's done, more or less. I give his food to him and signal Joe to distract again. Once he does, I sneak the old guy out of the store and thank him for his help, to which he replies, "I've been asked some weird crap, but you kids are messed up." I wasn't about to let him steal my pay from me, I was going to make him pay for it. So I head back to the bathroom to check, and I tell you, I could not have asked the guy to do a better job. I was aiming for a stool and a puddle, but this was something else. It had overflown out of the urinal down the wall, and on the floor it was everywhere. Joe swings by on his way out and couldn't believe what he was seeing. I then shook his hand and said to him, "It was a pleasure to work with you, and good luck." He leaves and I go to confront the supervisor. Once I reach the office, I let everything go on him. I swore at him, told him I quit, Joe's gone home, I'm leaving, nothing has been cleaned for clothes, and someone pooped in the urinal again. He begged me not to leave while I laughed at him manically. I told him to piss off. You wanna take my pay? Take the job too. Have fun scraping poop off the wall. I threw my shirt at him, walked out and never went back. I heard from Joe that supervisor was there all night cleaning everything and was forced to clean the bathroom. Everyone except supervisor knows what I did and cheered for me for doing it. I went down in store history for the next year because it closed after that and was replaced by another generic fast food store. This one is a bit of a crazy story, so let's get ready. Also, I know that some of you are looking back to read the title and see if you actually read what you saw. And yes, in fact, it is true, and I was the person that helped the police catch this woman. I did not know her personally, I just knew that there was a middle-aged woman at the other end of the block that had a ton of cats. I didn't know if all of them were hers or if some were just strays that she fed. I only knew that the block had a problem with cats roaming around because of her open door policy. I live in a very relaxed neighborhood at the time though, and nobody wanted to do anything drastic about the seemingly lonely woman and her army of cats. I later found out that she had about 30 cats living with her at any given time. So when the next part of the story came to light, nobody was even thinking about her. The burglaries in this neighborhood were starting and nobody had any clues on what was happening. It seemed that no matter how well we were locking our doors and windows, people were coming in undetected and stealing things. To most people, it only happened once and then they didn't think much of it. I was one of the unlucky ones that seemed to get broken into multiple times though. Again and again, I would come home to what I thought was how I left the house only to find things missing. They were never large things and the values seemed to range drastically. A single earring here, a ring there, even fake jewelry. Now that alone was odd for everyone, because if they are going to break into a house to steal someone's valuables, they might as well do it all at once. So the police were stumped about what was happening. Now I would say that this would be a fun mystery for you to solve, but the answer is clearly in the title of this story. The crazy cat lady was the one behind it the entire time. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though on how this was discovered. I was getting sick of not only getting robbed, but the stress that it put on me every time I went out. I was worrying about things being stolen. And then I had to come home and search every inch to see if anything small was stolen or not. It was causing me a lot of stress and I ended up shelling out for one of those home cameras. It was not an expense I wanted to do, but if it would help put my mind at ease, it was worth it. Since I was a big ticket house that kept getting hit, I decided to let the police know what I was doing and that if I got any useful footage, I would send it in to them. Now all I would have to do is sit and wait for them to hit again. Part of me wanted them not to because I was tired of losing expensive things, but on the other hand, I wanted them caught to stop all this madness. I even left out a diamond ring where it could easily be seen in hopes that it would catch something. It took 2 days, but finally the camera detected movement and I got an alert on my phone. I took a bathroom break so I could sneak off and see what was going on in my house. When I saw a cat entering through the crawl space, I actually didn't believe what I was seeing when it came up. It grabbed the ring in its mouth and left the way it came from. I sent the video to the police and they were just as confused as I was. It was not like they could go and arrest a cat. They did have an idea and asked if they could use my house to set up some more decoy jewelry they would provide, and it would be fake, to keep an eye on what was happening. I agreed to help them and gave them camera access. It was not until a week later that I was able to get the full story from them after they said they were done with my house. I'm not entirely sure if I was supposed to know this or if it was just a thank you for letting them use my space. The cat obviously was not the mastermind of this whole thing, but the person who owned the cats. Yep, we circle back to the middle-aged lady down the street. She had been training them to sneak into people's homes in order to steal valuables. Now, if you are like me, you would not even think that cats were able to be trained, but it turns out that similar to most animals, food and treats were a big motivation to them. So, while we all thought she was just lonely and wanted the cats for companions, she was actually training them to steal. They didn't know this until she was arrested and actually confessed to what she had done. She said that she would find stray cats that she was able to train with treats and then send them outside to go find things like jewelry. When they would return with the stolen goods, they would be rewarded with treats and extra food. Everyone on the block was extremely shocked because of how nice of a lady she seemed at first. Everyone was hoping that things would go to trial so we could get more information about it, but instead we only know that in total she confessed to pawning everything she had the cats steal, and it added up to $250,000. I know that pawn shops don't give the best price, so I would have loved to know how much the courts actually valued everything she stole at. She was sentenced to 5 years in jail. The only thing that was left to be worked out what was to do with the 30 cats that they found to be in her care. Most of them went to the animal shelter so they could be taken better care of before trying to be adopted out. Now I say most because the one that I caught on camera stealing my diamond ring I felt sort of an attachment to. I knew that she didn't know what she was doing by stealing from me, and I felt bad when I saw the kind of bad care that she was in. All the cats had fleas and clearly were not getting the amount of food they should have. So that cat, who I now named Ginny, is a now happy and healthy cat living with me. And yes, she still sometimes tries to bring me shiny things, thinking she will get rewarded, but we are working on that behavior. She is also now an indoor cat because I worry about her going back to her Oliver Twist ways.